All right, it is 3:31, so we'll get started here. Thanks everyone for joining our MWEE Practitioner Webinar Series. For those of you that I don't know, my name is Elise Sheffield. I work for the NOAA Chesapeake Bay Office, and I support the Bay Program Education Work Group. I'm joined today by my colleague Krista. We'll be active in the chat, so if you have any questions, don't hesitate to send us a message, and we're here to support you. As you probably know, this is part of our regular MWEE Practitioner Series, which we host on a monthly basis, except for in the summertime, we take a nice little break for folks. But we cover topics related to designing and implementing meaningful watershed educational experiences, as well as some of the unique science content and other resources that can kind of serve as a basis for MWEE investigations. So we can go on to the next slide here, Krista. This fall and winter, we have a little bit of a new approach that we're really excited about. So after this webinar, we're actually going to be releasing a series of 15 to 20-minute pre-recorded webinars on NOAA's Community Engagement Guidelines for Excellence. And then following those, we'll be providing some open space conversations for you all to dialogue around these and really dig into some of the topics. So we're really excited for that. I just wanted to give you a taste for what's coming up next for our practitioner series. This is going to be kind of the theme for the next couple of months. Additionally, I wanted to just flag that we're getting to that time of the year where you can expect to see the Chesapeake NOAA Be Wet and NOFO coming out. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, you might see that on the street. And we have a lot of great priorities this year that I think many of you could find some interest in. So if you ever have questions about that, you can reach out to us directly. We're always happy to have a conversation in that space. We can go on to the next slide here, and I will get towards actually introducing our presenters. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we get there, though. I wanted to let you know that all of these webinars are, of course, recorded and archived on the Bay Program's YouTube page. We have a MWEE Practitioner channel where you can find all of these long-term. So that usually comes out in like 1 to 2 weeks after we record. So feel free to share that with any colleagues that you might find that might be interested in that. And because this is being recorded, we ask that you keep your videos off, and we also ask that you remain muted through the webinar. We'll have time for live Q&A at the end, and we'll actually cut that off so it's not part of the recording. But don't let that, prevent you from asking questions. Please use the chat actively. If you hear something that you like, feel free to, chime in and say so. If you have questions, you can ask them along the way, and we'll have a chance to pitch those to our presenters today too. So with that, we have 3 wonderful and experienced folks with us here on the webinar today, where our focus is schools and climate resilience, and the theme is trees are cool. So you're going to hear from 3 folks. First up is Julie Mayhorter, who has recently created a resource for around trees in schools and how to kind of use them in that space that she's going to be introducing, which we're really excited about. And then Elise Sheffield and Frank Rogers are longtime MWEE designers and implementers. They're really experts in this space, and they're going to be talking about how they've kind of, designed partnerships and implemented things that include tree planting around their meaningful watershed educational experience, and give some really great practical tips around that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julie to take it away for us.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
All good, Julie.
Okay, great. Well, hi, it's great to be with you all today. So I serve as the Mid-Atlantic Urban and Community Forestry Coordinator for the U.S. Forest Service. And in this role, I get to work closely with the state forestry agency programs and also a wide network of partners in the region. So I know as a group of environmental educators that I don't really need to sell you on the benefits of trees for clean air and water, for wildlife habitat, and for people too. But despite all these benefits, we do often have to make the case for investing in trees, not just in planting them, but in maintaining them over the long term so that they grow and they thrive.
Hey, Julie.
And when it comes to climate change impacts and community resilience, trees help on so many fronts.
Hey, Julie. Julie, sorry to interrupt you, but your voice is going in and out. If you could try turning off your video, we might be able to hear you a little bit better. Sorry, everyone, for the technical difficulty. Were you able to hear me, Julie? Krista, maybe you can chat her just to make sure she can hear us. Thanks everyone for your patience. There we go. I see Julie putting her video off. Julie, do you want to try to come back on for us? All right, yeah, Frank, thanks so much. Maybe, Krista, let's advance over to Frank's slides and we can kind of come back to this resource once Julie's able to get her internet a little bit more stable. All right, you're up, Frank.
Hi, everyone. I'm Frank Rogers, I'm director of Kekapen Institute in West Virginia. So welcome to Kekapen Institute's Zoom room in Great Kekapen, West Virginia. Kekapen, the river, in Shawnee means healing waters. That's where we get our namesake. And I've been engaged in schoolyard tree planting since 1996, beginning in Baltimore City. I'm an International Society of Arboriculture certified arborist with expertise in urban forestry and a passion for schoolyard tree plantings. Next slide. I was going to say to follow on what Dr. Mayhorter had said, but what Julie will hopefully tell you about is some of the benefits of trees. And I'd like to share this quote from Dr. Francis Coe at University of Illinois. There's a notion that green spaces, or sorry, that's my typo. Green spaces are just frivolous and an amenity. Urban forestry to mayors is on the last list. It's really not seen as a necessary part of human habitats, but I think that's what our research is pointing to. Next slide. We all know that the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is now. So let's do as Dr. Coe suggests and move tree plantings up to the first on the first list. And don't worry, all my slides are not this dense. And remember, this is being recorded, so you don't try to take notes. The important thing to take away from Dr. Sullivan and Dr. Coe's work, they are proving the causal relationship between sylvan places. Okay, they are proving that healthy trees results in better mental health. It is not a coincidence. It is not a casual or coincidental. It is a causal relationship. In some of the studies that Dr. Sullivan has done, students had a 13% increase in performance. Next slide. And what principal or superintendent wouldn't like to see a 13% improvement in their students' performance? We know air pollution, specifically CO2 and greenhouse gases, are driving climate change. Trees scrub these pollutants from our atmosphere. Just as important as fighting climate change, trees clean the air that students breathe. I did not know until recently that air pollution is the greatest environmental threat to people and contributes to millions and millions of deaths annually. I recently heard a NOAA scientist say it may be as high as 10 million people annually. Air pollution is contributing to their death. Tree canopy, that's the area of leaves in a tree's canopy. Tree canopy is a natural vacuum for these pollutants. The surface of a tree, the surface area of a tree is immense. Consider a leaf. Thousands and thousands of leaves in a given tree, and every leaf has two sides. And that tree is vacuuming out. The surface area is catching and absorbing CO2, sulfur dioxide, ozone, and nitrogen dioxide, and also catching particulate matter. So it's cleaning the air we breathe. All students will know right away, trees produce oxygen. But more importantly, they're scrubbing the air that we breathe. Next slides. So consider that as you take children into the woods this fall, that all the leaves that are down at their feet were just up above their head, cleaning the air and protecting them from solar radiation and cooling the planet. I find that trees and students are a natural match. Trees are fun. Next slide. So now we've given you some talking points for principals and school boards to get tree planting on their first list. Dr. Mayhorter will share with you the tree equity score here in the Chesapeake Bay. We also have the Chesapeake Conservancy has provided us land cover. These tools help us to prioritize where to plant. This land cover is on the block level, so house by house in the red buildings there. Next slide. We'll zoom in a little bit to, my slides may be, this land cover allows, next slide, you'll go through that. It'll show a couple of papers, and then you can flip to the next map. So we can use this land cover to analyze where there are and are not trees. And then we'll go to, there we go. So now I'm zooming in a little bit on Morgan County, West Virginia. It looks like a lot of trees, right? In the middle of that, next slide, this is Berkeley Springs High School. Regardless of all the trees around the school, less than 7% of that canopy or that campus has trees. Next slide. All schools have an urban footprint, right? Lots of building, lots of impervious surface. What we need to do is get trees on the campus. Now we know why. And if we use our tools to figure out where we need to plant trees, next question is, who do we need? So in the chat box, please go ahead and chat ideas. Fundamentally, for me, everybody. You absolutely have to have facilities, local volunteers. You need a lead teacher, students, administrators, everyone involved. Next slide. So teachers, don't go it alone. We have professionals that are ready to help you. Again, you don't have to take notes. These slides will come back up. If you're a teacher, find a forester. If you're a nonprofit, find a teacher. Next slide, but don't go it alone, because tree experts are needed teachers, and nonprofits bring an opportunity, not a workload. Teachers should not know how to plant trees any more than they should be expected to mow the lawn. So some basics, make it a MWEE. If it's not educational, it's not welcome at the school. Know the rules. Safety and respect are fundamental at any campus. Plan and plan some more. Next slide. Again, bring an opportunity, not a workload. This can be heavy work, tree planting, so be prepared for that. Next slide. Student leadership. Again, kids love trees. It's a natural connection, I find. Next slide. Solve a problem. Students intuitively know where they need shade and where they have stormwater or erosion problems. Next slide. You need to have continued engagement. After the trees are planted, you need to follow through. It's not the number of trees we plant, it's the number of trees we grow that will make the difference in the future. Next slide. Remember, when you're planting, plan for the future. Don't think about the tree the size it is now. Think about it when it's full grown. And if you don't know the school's plans, you might put your trees in the wrong place. They're going to be there for decades and decades, lifetimes. So think of that when you're making your planting plan. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the presentations.
Thanks so much, Frank. And just a quick question to pitch to you before we move on to Julie. Alexis was wondering that program that you were using to show tree cover, was that the tree equity score, or which one was that?
That is an additional tool. If you go to Chesapeake Conservancy, you can find their work on land cover. Maryland DNR has similar tools also to look at land cover.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Would you mind dropping maybe a link or two into the chat for people to access?
I will, certainly will.
Thanks so much. All right, Julie, let's give this another whirl. If you would come off of mute and leave your video off, let's give it a shot.
Yep, can you hear me now?
We can, thank you.
Okay, I'm so sorry, everyone. We've been having flash flooding up here where I live today, so maybe that played into it. But let's see. So I think I was just getting to the fact that, you know, when we talk about climate change, just the benefits of trees just are so multifaceted in terms of air quality, as Frank was talking about, urban heat island, stormwater and flooding concerns. And what we know is that there are many communities, in particular low-income neighborhoods and communities of color, that don't receive these benefits of tree canopy. And they are the ones bearing the brunt of air pollution, flooding, and heat-related health risks that are only increasing with climate change. And I'll share, you know, from recent heat mapping efforts in Richmond, Virginia, Washington, D.C., and Baltimore. Those efforts show that in the wealthier neighborhoods, you have higher tree canopy, and they're about 17 degrees cooler during a heat wave than in the lower income, low canopy neighborhoods. This can be life or death difference in vulnerable communities that don't have or can't afford air conditioning. So fortunately, there's quite a body of research and tools now that can quantify tree canopy and its benefits to help us all make the case for trees. And a few examples are shown here in this infographic. You can find much more of that research at the Vibrant Cities Lab website shown there. So next slide, please. As part of the Chesapeake Watershed Agreement, we do have a tree canopy expansion goal. And we work a lot with the state forestry agencies and partners on different kinds of actions to help with this goal. We know that schools and environmental education programs are such an important arena to pursue these tree efforts. So let's see, are we ahead? Have we moved ahead to the Trees in Schools guide?
Yes.
Slide. Last year, we were fortunate to have a college student intern who pulled together a wide variety of tree-related education resources into a one-stop guide. You can access it at the link there, and I'll give a quick preview of the guide now. I hope you will check it out and use it and share it with colleagues after this webinar. And we want to keep improving the guide, so if you have edits or suggestions for future versions, we really do welcome that input. Get in touch with us. So next slide, please. The first section of the guide, it really gives a nice overview of tree benefits I talked about, and also features some of those specific benefits of nature to the learning environment and to student success and well-being. And again, these are probably familiar points to you, but we included them in the guide so that we can help folks make the case to others in the school system or community that might need convincing. Next slide. We should be on the slide. Sorry, my slides aren't advancing. So we should be on the slide with the iTree curriculum piece. Yep. So the second section of the guide is a roundup of many, many tree-focused curriculum resources that are compiled from different sources that hopefully will be helpful for you in weaving these into your MWEE issue investigation or action projects. And the one that I just wanted to highlight quickly today is the Teaching with iTree unit developed by Project Learning Tree. You can use this tool with students to enter information about specific trees on the campus or in the community and get a report out on what that tree is providing in terms of carbon capture and air quality and stormwater reduction. And like I said, though, the guide has pages and pages of other curriculum resources that I'd encourage you to check out. And then the third section of the guide gives an overview of the different sustainable schools certification programs and in the Watershed. Our goal is to really highlight how these programs could be woven together with tree efforts, tree curriculum, tree planting activities to encourage more integration there. And next slide. The last tool I wanted to quickly share, which Frank mentioned, it's a tool that was launched by American Forests earlier this year, the Tree Equity Score Mapper. And it compiles many data layers, including tree canopy, surface temperature, health, and lots of demographic data. And it uses these to compute a tree equity score at the neighborhood scale. So this is a screenshot of Metro Philadelphia. And you can see the color scale, in the color scale, the green is a higher tree equity score and orange is the lower tree equity scores. And I had selected a census block in Camden, New Jersey that has a low score of 44. And that's driven in part by its low canopy, which is only 10%. It's hard to see the fine print on the slide, but when you get into the tool yourself, you'll be able to see all these metrics for any community you want to look at. So that score is driven partly by that low canopy number, but also by the high percentages of people of color, high percent poverty, and high percent unemployment in that census block. So I really think this is a great resource for making that connection between trees and equity and climate resilience. And I hope you enjoy exploring that in your efforts in the future. So that's all I've got. I hope you'll check out the guide and give us some feedback on it. And again, share it broadly. And with that, I'll pass it back over to Elise. Thanks.
All right, and Krista, we can flip forward to Elise Sheffield's slides. No questions so far in the chat, but if you have any that are piquing your interest, or you have anything that is coming to you, feel free to drop that in there. I'll just say, Meredith is excited that there's a list of all the tree certifications, or all the school certifications. And what I really love about the guide that Julie's team has put together is that it really takes into account two of the big Chesapeake Bay Agreement goals of we can see how student MWEEs fit in there, and then we also can see how the sustainable schools piece fits in. So it's a really great resource. I highly recommend people checking it out. I see that Frank has been dropping some links in the chat for us. So Elise, over to you.
Well, thank you. And it's such a pleasure to be with you all. Thank you for finding time this afternoon in surely your very busy worlds to take the big tree view of something and as vital and long lasting as bringing trees into our world. I am Elise Sheffield. I have the privilege of being the education director at Boxerwood Nature Center and Woodland Garden in Western Virginia, rural Western Virginia, about 3 hours south of Washington, D.C., near the West Virginia border. And my presentation is more a practitioner's point of view of how do you tangle trees in with systemic MWEEs. I've been a NOAA beneficiary, beneficiary for a number of years in the past that brought us, gave us roots. And so we will share about our program and how trees have been woven into that program. So next slide, please. This is my one little schematic design. I want to show how a nonprofit works in long-term partnership with local schools. We have 3 different school divisions in our rural county of Rockbridge County. And we've focused on being basically a public utility for those 3 schools. We are their ally, their expediter, their go-to. And in the state of Virginia, you've got, of course, the Commonwealth wants things to happen, right? We can see that in the state. And the state makes various band-aids, either funded or unfunded, to schools like MWEEs and various things. And the schools are down there trying to, hang on. And meanwhile, many of us work for nonprofits that have a conservation vision. And we're ready to befriend our partners. And 15 years ago, Boxerwood and these 3 school divisions formed a partnership, which we call Project NEST, Nurturing Environmental Stewardship Together, taking care of our nest, right? And we have, over the years, with help from NOAA, Chesapeake Bay Trust, license plate funds from Virginia, donors, we've built a pretty comprehensive systemic program for children preschool into high school. Our goal is that every child in our county grows up with multiple experiences connecting to the natural world, and particularly for our presentation today, by the time she's 12, has actually physically, tangibly done something to make the world a better place. In effect, being a blessing to the earth and not a problem. You can bring that sense of self forward, then there are so many other things we can do environmentally as well. So next slide, please. So I'm giving you the big view of our program, and then I'll tell you how trees work into it. So as I mentioned, we work with 3 school divisions. That's at the bottom there, and that comprise the number of schools you see there, 70 preschools, et cetera, 7 elementary, 3 middle, and 2 high schools. And the students in our community sometimes move around. They're low income. They move from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. But our systemic program ensures that wherever they move to a new school, they are picking up the same curriculum that they met somewhere else. So we do field-based work. And you can see the list there of our kind of theme of each year. It's all field-based at our nature center. And then about grade 4 and 5, we go into rivers and streams and communities and other places, even caves. I've highlighted a couple of grades because those are the grades that we've achieved systemic implementation. By that, I mean 100% of all kids in all schools, in all classrooms in that grade are doing field-based work with us each year. So you can see in those core grades 3 through 6, we have 4 years to really work with students as they grow from young learners to their first steps as young earth stewards. And trees have an important part in that work along with our MWEEs. Next slide, please. And I'm sure many of you are doing MWEEs and macroinvertebrates, and so are we. Each year we focus a lot on watershed education, water quality. So about 900 children a year, grades 4, 5, and 6, will put on boots and do macroinvertebrate work with us. A lot of water quality monitoring. But as we know, MWEEs aren't just water monitoring, it's also what are we going to do? And so we've moved it more and more to schoolyard action projects. That's the photo on the right. So once we know about our local river and its health, how is our local schoolyard impacting that river? What can we do at our schoolyard level to make a change or to befriend our crawdads that are in the rivers? And if you think this presentation is going on about how we plant trees at school, well, actually, Frank was the inspiration there. Actually, we're going to take it a different route because we have a problem at Boxwood in our model. Next slide, please. Which is the systemic problem in that we work with many, many, many classrooms. so we have many, many, many trees. So for a moment, I just want to pause here and ask, invite you to put in the chat, either through your experience or your thought, what do you find some of the benefits or challenges implementing pedagogically systemic MWEEs across a grade or multiple grades? And we'll just pause for a minute. I'm curious what others, their perspectives, because we have one and we're going to share it in a minute. So go ahead and type in your thought, not related to trees, but just when you're trying to do systemic, all classrooms, all a grade or multiple grade bands. If you've tried that, what's been great about that, or what's been tough about that? Elise, I don't see any. I don't see any replies.
There we go. Alexa says a variable investment and interest in teachers. So you might have some like folks who are so excited about doing an outdoor field experience or planting trees, or whatever that MWEE entails, and others may be less so. April says, yeah, same thing. They have different interests in maybe what they want to do. Anne sees lots of benefits of collaboration between nature centers, school systems. She feels like nonprofits are the catalyst of change in public school system. That's a group, very optimistic. Yeah. Meredith calls out an important focus on math and reading right now, especially post-COVID, trying to get the learning gap addressed. Mm-hmm. And Frank gives a very practical response of trees require years to establish, and that's great for a multi-year MWEE, but it can limit student input. So yeah, lots of really good, and David recognizes the time challenge. Sometimes teachers have a hard time being able to like really dedicate that much time in their programming. So more stuff coming in, but there's some fodder for
We
you.
could talk all afternoon about benefits and challenges of systemic MWEs. But here's what from our world, working with about 2,800 students and 120 classrooms a year, probably at least half of those are doing MWEs. Let's see our slide reveal what we think. This is very simple, but in our world where we are, the greatest benefit is everyone's on board, right? That's fantastic, right? So no matter who you are in our county, whatever your school background, whatever your family background, you will be going in the field and you will be participating and getting into streams and doing cool stuff. And you will be doing it with many other students over the course of a year, the cumulative effect of that. And that means there's momentum. As I mentioned, we have hundreds of students checking our streams and rivers for us twice a year. We have many scores of students stenciling storm drains, cleaning up schoolyards. That's part of our MWEs, right? And that means big impact, especially when it's over multiple grades, doing different things. We've had high school students doing PSAs about protecting water. So all good. We could talk a long time, but the challenges are the same as the benefits, really. The challenge is everybody's on board, just like these trees on the trailer. That's a lot of classrooms. And just as you've got benefits of economies of scale, where I know that every classroom in the third grade is going to do certain things, that's a lot of classrooms to work with. And those of us who are MWEE practitioners, we know the ideal MWEE also involves an action component. And you've got, say, 18 classrooms of fourth graders. Maybe one teacher is teaching 4 classrooms. Is she really wanting to do 4 different action projects, or are we really going to want to manage 18 action projects? And that's just this year, and then you've got more and more, and you can see it goes kind of crazy. And so our experience is the trade-off is standardization, that we have some routines or some associations. There's a certain place where trees come in our curriculum, right? There's a certain place when we do river monitoring. So we're not inventing it all the time. There is a tradition going on as it evolves. But the tradition, the backside of that means maybe there's less voice and choice from youth. So, or it's more constrained, right? Because it's not, okay, we've investigated water quality, what are we going to do now? No, it's more like we've investigated water quality. Here's the invitation of what's going to happen next. So may I have the next slide? And one of the key things that happens next is putting hands with trees. To me, I want that learning to be tangible, something that they've done, that they've learned about the watershed and they've done something. And so we have had a partnership with the Kakapen Institute, Frank's work, for a couple of years for particular projects sponsored by Kakapen called the Growing Native Project. And in this project, students receive tiny tree whips for potting up and placing in nurseries for 1 to 2 years. These are all native trees. And the goal is to learn about trees and watersheds by doing that, and then to plant the trees in the community. So I'm going to show you how this works at scale in our world. Next slide. So this is, we incorporate trees into our programs both at the 4th and the 6th grade level. So at the 4th grade level, it's a year-long arc. So there are in our area 20 classrooms of 4th graders. All of them, even exactly today, in fact, a classroom of 4th graders visit our Arboretum, our nature center, and they do a 4-hour program about watersheds and how our streams are related. They learn how to test water and all kinds of things. Today, I took those children down to our nursery today, and I showed them some 6-month-old trees. And I said, look, we've just learned about trees today. Here are some seedlings that last year's children planted. Are you interested in trees? Oh, yes, they were. But it was trying to get some give and take. It's not just me, we're going to plant trees, but we invite classrooms to think about that. We give classrooms the option. Do you want to learn how to plant trees and plant trees in the spring? If so, we will send someone to your classroom. But as a classroom, kids, to talk with your teacher. If you want to come, we'll come. If you don't, that's fine. So we're trying to give choice within the options we can offer. And that works when you're 9 years old. In spring, we will revisit the children we saw in the fall and bring and plant up the trees. So next slide. How does that all kind of fit in a bigger picture? These are some photos just to explain what I was just trying to explain. So in the fall here at our nature center, one of the activities we do is a kind of an Enviroscape role play, but we've made our own 3D watershed board, and students understand how headwaters communities impact the Chesapeake Bay and how we can prevent pollution and trees that we can plant. Then they, in the spring, receive the trees and plant up. And in the middle, they've done some water quality work. Let's go on to look at the next slide and see how all this is working. So by the end of the year, when we do the math, we might have 600 trees that are in pots. And that's a lot. That's not schoolyard ready for every year generating out 600 trees. So we're more community focused. And so we have created nurseries at designated schools, particularly the middle school, which is a feeder for 4 elementaries. Let's see the next picture, the next slide. Just last week, we installed this nursery. Kids did it themselves. We worked with kids in an after-school program. They literally put up the panels, Frank, and we transferred trees that we had been holding at Boxerwood. So what's going to happen to the 200 or 300 trees at this middle school? Here's the cool part that we like because we see kids again and again. Next slide. When those 4th graders become 6th graders and attend that school, they're going to be reunited with their 2-year-old trees. At that time in the 6th grade, when they're back out studying human impact with their science teachers and doing their own urban water inventory investigations, they will be brought these trees back with a consideration. What do you want to do with your 200 trees? And so Boxerwood will offer some options. We can donate them to civic groups. We can plant them along the urban riparian area. And the group will decide, and not only that, they will participate in these tree plantings as part of their 6th grade work, thus completing the arc. Next slide, please. What happened in the middle of a pandemic with all those trees on the runway getting ready to plant? We tried family tree plantings. We brought in master gardeners to help teach the families and planted a whole riparian buffer in along a retirement home. So we are actively looking for new riparian buffers through our area. And let's see what's next. I think we're almost to our last slide. We are. So what's happening next? We're still trying to get back to full strength for our Growing Native program. And this year, we've had a very robust fall. We've been teaching every day. Kids are excited. They like that they're being able to do tangible things. We'll be integrating that nursery into 6th grade science classes and also functional development classes for kids with special needs at that middle school for care. We are, as I mentioned, we've got several new tree planting places. We're working with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, actually, on shared tree planting projects up in our headwaters. And these trees, we hope, with the kids' approval, will not only be donated to those plantings, but the kids themselves by next year will be planting those trees. So meeting more. We're most excited that all of this in our big view is connecting up with a new program that we're developing, launching in January after 2-year development, a community-based carbon offset marketplace. And so that in effect, these community-based extra accelerated tree plantings will be able to generate offsets that people can make donated purchases for, and we use those funds to reinvest in our planting, thus accelerating earth care in our community while kids also understand their part of the solution as well. So though we're planting in trees, as you know, and we know, it's really about tending earth stewards and starting young. So that's, I believe, we could go to the next slide, but I believe we're into our thank yous.
Yeah, and huge thank you to Elise, Frank, and Julie for sharing with us today. I'm going to turn the recording off now and open it up to Q&A.